Let's create this weather application with the Open Weather API. Hi everyone, I'm Kylan. I make programming very simple and easy to understand. So if you enjoy programming or just want to learn something new, make sure you subscribe and hit the like button. Let's get right into it. Over here in VS Code, I've got a blank file open up, and I've got this assets folder. It's just got a bunch of different assets we're going to be using for this video, and you can find all these assets just linked down in the description below. So let's get right into it. First thing we're going to do is create a new file. We're going to create index.html. We're going to create another file, app.css, and we're going to create script.js. Alright, and these are going to be the three files we need for this. Now let's go ahead and create our boilerplate code. We'll go ahead and link our CSS, and we will add in our script tag as well. And we'll go ahead and defer that. Now we're going to put everything here inside of a main tag, and I'm just going to give that a class of main. Alright, inside of this we're going to have a header with the class of header, and we're also going to have a section with a class of display section. Let's start with the main. Alright, we'll go ahead and save that. We'll head over here to the CSS. Whoops. And on the main section, we'll just go ahead and set the height to 100 view height, and we'll set the width to 100 view width. And then we're going to set a default background image, and this is going to be URL, and we're going to pass in the URL. We'll just make the sunny weather image our default background. Now let's open this up in the browser. So you can see we got a little bit of margin and padding going on here. So let's just get rid of that. So we're going to say star, star before, and star after. We're going to set the box sizing to border box. We're going to set the margin to 0, and we're going to set the padding to 0 as well. And now we've got no margin, no padding, and we've got the border box size. So now we'll go ahead and head back to the HTML, and we'll work on this header section here. This header is going to go up at the very top, and it'll basically just be a input box with a search button where you can send off your zip code to be geocoded, because we have to geocode the zip code to latitude and longitude values before we can request weather data. Let's do this first. We'll go ahead and create a form. The action, we're not going to go anywhere, and we're going to add an ID to this form just called form. And inside of this form, we're going to have an input, and it's going to be a type equals text. The name is going to be zip code, and the ID is going to be zip code input. And that's our input. Let's go ahead and actually add a placeholder as well. And this is going to say zip code. If we save that, we can see we get our little box here. Now let's work on the button. So let's create a button. And we're going to give that a class of search button, search-btn. And this is going to be type equals submit. Submit. And inside of the button, we're going to actually add an SVG. So we're going to open our SVG tag, and we're going to set the view box equal to 001616. We're going to give it a class of search img, search image. Next, we're going to create a path, and we're going to give it a D attribute, and I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this in right here. And we can see over here we got our button showing up, but nothing is showing up inside of it. That's because we need to give this SVG a height and a width. So let's go ahead and do that. So back over here in the CSS, we're going to start with the header, and we're going to set display flex. We're going to say justify content center, and we're going to align items center, and we're just going to give a little bit of padding on the top of 10 pixels. And that's our header. Let's go ahead and add in our input. We'll go ahead and select zip code input, and we are going to say border none, outline none. We're going to set a static height of 35 pixels, and we're going to set a static width of 250 pixels. And we're going to give this a border radius of 20 pixels. And then we're going to indent the text a little bit so that it looks nicer. So we're going to say text indent of 10 pixels. And we're going to scale up the font size to 1.2 rem. And I'm just realizing that I didn't actually add this class to the input. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll add a class here, and we'll give it that zip code input. Now if we save, we've got that nice border radius. It's indented very nicely, and it's got the nice larger font size. Now let's work on this button over here. So if we go back over to the CSS, we're going to select search dash button. We're going to give it a background color of white. We're going to remove the border, so border none. We're going to remove the outline, outline none. We're going to give it a little bit of margin on the left to get it off of the search box. So let's go to margin left, and we'll just say 10 pixels. We'll give this a static height of 35 pixels and a static width of 35 pixels. And we'll finish it off with a border radius of 50% to give us, and we need to now scale that icon down. We're going to select that icon with the class of search image. We're just going to give it a fill of black. We're going to give it a static height of 20 pixels and a static width of 20 pixels. And our search icon's looking pretty nice right there like that. Now the last thing I want to do is when we hover on the button, so we're going to select search button, and we're going to say on the hover, we just want to change the cursor to a pointer. So that way we get that pointer whenever we hover over this. Now we are pretty much done with this header for now. The styling is pretty much done. So let's jump over here and work on the section, the display section now, where you're actually going to see the weather info. So first thing we want to do is create a div, and this is going to have a class of item outer, just like that. And inside of this item outer, we're going to have a div. This is going to display the city name that it geocodes to. So this is going to be the city name that we get from our weather info. So we'll go ahead and add the class city text outer. And then inside of this, we're going to have your weather in, and we're going to have a span tag here. And we'll give that span tag a class. No, I'm sorry. We'll give it an ID. Whoops. We'll give it an ID of city text. All right. And then right after that span tag, we're going to add a colon there. So it says your weather in, and this right here between the N and the colon is where we will put the city that we get back from our weather data. Next, we'll go ahead and add in a span tag, and this is going to have a class of temp. And I'm actually going to add a couple of default classes as well. We'll have margin start ms-20, that'll be margin start 20 pixels. We'll have margin top 20 pixels, and we'll have bold as well. These are just some default classes. And we'll go ahead and add a default weather degree in here. This is where our temperature is going to go. And we'll go ahead and add an ID to this of temp. Next, we're going to add us another span tag in here, and we are actually going to use this for the Fahrenheit little circle with the F. And there is HTML character code for that, and that's going to be ampersand octothorpe 8457, and we'll put semicolon after that. So if we save, now we see we have 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and we'll go ahead and give that a class of deg symbol, and we'll say mt20 here as well, so that way we have some margin on the top of that as well. Next, we'll go ahead and add in a div with the class of real fill. This is where our real fill is going to go, and we'll give that a ms20 as well. Now inside of this, we're going to say real fill, and then we'll have a span tag inside of this. We'll give this a class of bold, and we'll go ahead and add just a random number. And we're going to go ahead and add an ID of real fill text. And I just realized I accidentally misspelled real up here. It's R-E-A-L, not R-E-E-L. We'll save that, and we see we got our real fill of 78. Alright, now let's start with the styling of this. So we'll go ahead and head back over to the CSS. So over here in the CSS, we'll go ahead and add those default classes up here at the top. We'll do MT20, and we'll say margin top 20 pixels. We'll give that MS20, margin left 20 pixels, and we'll give that bold class font weight of 600. Now let's head down here, and we will select display section. We'll give that a minimum height of 400 pixels. We'll set display to flex. We'll justify content center, and we will align items center as well. Now let's grab that item outer, and we'll set the height to a static 400 pixels. We'll set the width to 450 pixels, and we're going to give a backdrop filter, and we're going to say blur 20 pixels. And that's going to give us our blur effect on the background of here. And we're going to set the background color in RGBA 255, 255, 255, 2, or 0.2, just like that. And now you can see we've got our blur effect right here. And I just realized I misspelled display here as well. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now we've got that whole box being centered. Now we'll go ahead and select our city text. And it's going to be the city text. And let's add that dot city text so we can select that class. And it's going to be the outer. And we're going to set text align to center. And we're going to say font size of 1.5 rem. Now we get that bigger font on that there. Next, we'll go ahead and add our font to our temperature and our degree symbol. Now I'm going to go ahead and select both of these. And go ahead and select both of these, and we'll add a font size of 4 rem. That gives us that much bigger font. So now let's go ahead and add that weather icon. So let's go back over to the HTML, and right inside of the display section, we're going to create a div. It's going to be weather wrapper, just like that. And we're going to have an image. In this image, we're going to default to the sunny icon. And we'll go ahead and give a class of weather icon. And we'll give an ID of weather icon as well. And that looks like it is way too big. So let's head over to the CSS and we will scale it down a bit. So we'll go ahead and select that weather wrapper. We're going to set the display to flex. We're going to align the items center, and we're going to turn flex wrap on to wrap, just like that. Now we can go ahead and select that weather icon, and we're going to set the display to inline block. That way we can add some margin and padding to it. So let's add some margin to the top of 40 pixels. And we'll give a static height, not like that, height of 200 pixels, and a static width of 200 pixels as well. Now we've got that image scaled down just a bit there. And finally, we need to add that weather text to tell us what kind of weather it is outside. So let's just go ahead and add a span tag here. We'll give it a class of weather text. We'll give it an ID of weather text. And we'll just give it the default of cloudy. And we can see it's popping up down there. Now let's style it just a bit. Head back over to the CSS here, and in the CSS we'll get the weather text, and we'll give it a font size of 3 rem, and we will text align center, just like that. Let's actually scale that down to 2 rem, and the reason that this is on the next line is because we don't want it to be there, but we actually want it to be right next to the image there, just like that. So now we get that right next to there, and we'll actually go ahead and scale up to 3 rem again. That way we get that nice size there. And let's add a class ms20, just so we can get a little bit of spacing between the image and the text. And just one more thing, let's go ahead and head over to the HTML, and we will go to this section here, and we'll add the mt20 class to that, just to get it off of the search bar there a little bit. So I think that's just about it for the styles. Now we've got to work on the API request in the JavaScript. So let's just head over to the JavaScript. So if you want to access the OpenWeatherMap API, you will have to create an account with OpenWeatherMap. It is completely free, and I'll link it down below in the description. So go and check it out, create an account, and you'll be able to generate an API key. You'll need this API key to access the API. So to do this, the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to select that form. So we're going to say const form is equal to document.querySelector, and we're going to select the ID of form. And then we'll go ahead and take form and add an event listener to it. And on the submit, we will call the function set data on screen. And we need to create that function as well. So we need to create a couple functions actually. All of these functions are going to be asynchronous functions. So we'll include the async keyword in front of it. We're going to create this function here. And this is going to be get lat lon. And this is going to get the latitude and the longitude, because we need to send a request off to the geocoder with our zip code. Then once we get the response back of the latitude and longitude, then we can send another request for the weather data itself. We'll get the latitude and longitude using this function here, and then we're going to create another function, and we're going to call that get weather data. And this is where we're going to get our weather data from. And our last function is going to be that set data on screen function, which displays the data on the screen. Alright, so let's start off with our get lat and lon function. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a request. We're going to say request, and we're going to set it equal to the OpenWeather API endpoint for the geocoding. So this is the default. I just got it here, coordinates by zip/postcode. And we need to change a couple things in here. First of all, we need to change this here, the zip, to zip code. And this, the API key, to your specific API key. Now I've already saved my API key in the API key variable. You will have to put your API key here. So this is going to be our request. I'm going to add a default zip code. We'll go ahead and up here we'll say let zip code equal 90291. That'll be our default zip code. Now we are going to send our request, we need to save that request response in a variable. So we'll say let response equal, and then we're going to await the fetch, and we're going to pass in the request. That's this URL right here to the API endpoint. Once we get a response back, we're going to have to convert that to JSON. So we'll say let JSON equal, and then we're going to have to await that response.json. And then we will just return our JSON, just like that. And that's that function done. So let's go on to our getWeather function, and we are going to select the chords. So we need to get the coordinates, which are the latitude and longitude. So we're going to say let chords equal, and then we're going to await the getLatlon function. Then we need to get the URL for the endpoint to the weather endpoint API. So I'll go ahead and find that real quick. So here I've got the endpoint for the weather request API. I'm just going to save that inside of this variable here. And we need to change a couple things on this as well. So the lat, we need to set this to whatever variable comes back from chords. So we're going to say chords.lat, and that returns from this function, it's going to return an object, and inside that object there's a value called lat, which is the latitude that was geocoded from our geocode request. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do the same thing for the longitude, and we're going to say chords.lon, and we still do need to pass in our API key here. So we'll go ahead and do that, API key, and we'll save that. And this is going to then be sent off to the endpoint. So we're going to say let request equal await fetch, and we need to pass in that URL. And then once we get that request back, we need to save that into JSON again, JSON, and let that equal to the await request.json, just like that. And then we will return the JSON from this function, just like that. So next we can work on this function where we're setting the values on the screen. So up here, we're requesting the latitude and longitude from the current zip code. Then we are getting the weather data, passing in the coordinates, saving the coordinates from that latitude and longitude request, and we're passing it into this URL, and we're sending that off and returning the JSON of the weather data. Now we are going to we're going to call this function, and then we're going to request, or we're going to put that information on the screen for the user. So the first thing we need to do is we need to pass in that event variable, and that will give us the event of when we clicked or submitted that form. And we need to check if we have an event, and if we do, we're going to prevent the default, prevent default, just like that. And we're going to set zip code equal to, and we're going to select document.querySelector, document.querySelector. We're going to select that zip code input, and we're going to get the value, and we're going to save that in the zip code variable. Next thing we need to do is we need to await for the weather data. So we're going to save that in a data variable. We're going to await, and we're going to call that get weather data function. And I need an equal sign here, just like that. Next, we're going to go ahead and grab the different elements on the screen that we need to update. So we want to select first the main is equal to document.querySelector main, just like that. And I believe I added that ID over here to the main. I did not. So let's add the ID of main here, just like that. And now we can select our main just like that. now we want temp, and we're going to do the same thing. And we'll select that just like that. Now we can select the city text with the ID of city text, and we're going to set the text content equal to data.name, and that's going to fill in this city right here. Now we're going to check if, before we do that, we want to get the current time and save it in a variable. So actually we're going to say let current time equal, we're going to say math.floor, because we're going to floor that, and we're going to just do date.now, and then this comes back in milliseconds, so we're going to divide that by 1,000 to get it in seconds, because that's how our API sends time back. So now we're going to check if the current time is greater than the data.sys.sunset. And this is going to tell us if this is greater than the sunset, that means it's nighttime. Otherwise, it's still during the day. If it's nighttime, we're going to set the background. So we're going to say select the main dot style dot background image. And we're going to set that equal to the nighttime.jpg image file. That's the main background image. We're going to say else down here. We're going to check to see if it's currently raining. So we want to check if data.rain, because if it's not raining in that current area, there will not be a value called rain. So that will be undefined. So if there is a value data.rain, we're going to set the main dot style dot background image. We're going to set that equal to the URL assets/jpg. We're going to say else if data.clouds. So if we have data.clouds, again, it won't be there if we don't have any cloud coverage at all. Clouds. And we want to check to make sure that data.clouds.all is greater than or equal to 50. So it gives us a response, the percentage of how much clouds are in the sky. And if it's more than 50%, we're going to set it as cloudy. So we're going to set the main.style.background image. I'm going to set it equal to URL assets/cloudy weather, just like that. Else, if neither of those are true, it means it's sunny out. So we're going to set the main.style.background image equal to URL, and we're going to select assets/sunny weather, just like that. And now we have to go up here and we need to check again to see if it is nighttime. We want to set the icon here based on the weather that's currently outside. So we're going to say if data.rain, and we're going to say weather icon dot source is equal to assets/rain icon. And we're going to select the text, the weather text dot text content, and set that equal to raining. I'm going to say else if data.clouds and data.clouds.all is greater than or equal to 50. We're going to set the weather icon.src equal to assets/cloudy icon. And we're going to set the weather text.text content equal to cloudy. Otherwise, if it's neither of those, we're going to set the weather icon dot source equal to assets slash sunny icon. And we're going to say weather text dot text content is equal to clear. Now there's one final thing we need to do for this. The last thing that we need to do is we need to set the temperature and the real feel here to whatever the temperature and the real feel is. So we're going to say real feel dot text content is equal to, and we're going to round this. So data dot main dot feels underscore like, and that will give us the text content of the real field data. And we'll do the same for the temp. We'll say temp dot text content is equal to math dot round, and we're going to select data dot main dot temp, just like that. And we're going to, on the page load, we're going to call this function here. And we're going to set, up here with our zip code, our default zip code is this right here. So, now this should work. One small thing that I did mess up, we are in the US, so we need to set that US country code here. And right here, we don't want to return the JSON function, but we will actually want to return the JSON. And now you can see that it has popped up. Whatever that place is the default. And there's one more thing we need to do. In the URL for the get weather data, we need to pass in one more argument called units. And we're going to set that equal to, and actually I need to have an ampersand first, then we're going to say units equal to imperial. And that will give us Fahrenheit units, just like that. So let's just check to make sure that this works. So we've got the default data being displayed. Let's see if we type in a zip code, a random 15725. And it looks like that's Avamore, wherever that is. And it looks like it is 46 degrees. It feels like it's 41. It is cloudy. The only issue is this sun icon, which we can go ahead and fix over in the code over here. And we can just go ahead and take these two lines here. And since it is not nighttime, we're running this function down here. So we'll copy this here for the cloudiness. Set the source, and we'll copy this here for the sun. So now if we refresh, we get our different logo, and if we do 15725, it looks like it's the same logo. It is cloudy and it's 46 degrees. So that's how you can create a weather application using the Open Weather Maps API. If you did like the video, make sure to slap a like on it. If you want to see more content just like this, I upload content like this all the time on my channel. Make sure you subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.